Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we dive into that huge stack of global news sources you see everywhere.
All the research, the science, the finance.
Exactly. And we pull out the vital insights, the stuff you really need to know. Basically, we try to make sense of it all, just for you.
And looking at the sources this week, things are moving incredibly fast. It feels like the world's almost fracturing, between these amazing breakthroughs and some serious geopolitical tension.
Total. What are we seeing?
Well, on one hand, you've got radical science. Think light-speed computing. Completely new ways to tackle cancer. But right alongside that, huge shifts in market sentiment, intense political power plays. It's happening everywhere.
It's a lot to track. So our goal here is synthesis. We'll start with the big intellectual leaps, the science and tech that change how we see things fundamentally.
Life, the universe, all that.
Yeah. Then we'll pivot fast to the big shifts, geopolitics, finance, the things shaping this exact moment.
It's the tiny details and the giant picture all interconnected. Innovation, power. It's all woven together.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the stuff that really pushes the boundaries. The cosmos, deep Earth, and the mysteries of life. We've got some genuinely, transformative breakthroughs in biology and medicine this week. And first up, something we all kind of wrote off years ago, junk DNA.
Right, that old term, it's basically being retired now.
Yeah.
Researchers at King's College London, they found these non-coding bits of our genome, the parts we thought were just filler.
Yeah, evolutionary leftovers or something.
Turns out they're actually critical and, interestingly, really vulnerable in certain blood cancers.
Wait, hang on. If they don't code for proteins, how do they become vulnerable? What's the connection?
So the sources say it's complex. Damage to the coding genes, the important ones, seems to set off this molecular chain reaction. And that reaction specifically targets and messes with these non-coding junk segments.
Ah, so the cancer's own survival mechanism creates a weak spot we didn't know about.
Precisely. It's like an unintended consequence that opens up a fatal flaw.
And the therapy angle is amazing because it uses tools we already have.
Exactly. That's a really elegant part. They found that existing drugs, specifically ones that inhibit DNA repair, when they use those on the cancer cells,
The cells can't handle the damage in the non-coding parts.
they just collapse. It's not just a potential new drug target. It's a whole new strategy. Using a known vulnerability in a place we ignored, it could lead to much smarter, more effective therapies for some really tough blood cancers.
That's incredible. Okay, moving from the tiny world of genes to our vision. There's also a huge clinical study offering hope for geographic atrophy. That's a really severe form of vision loss, right?
Yeah, it's irreversible usually. And this is a fascinating mix of neuroscience and engineering. It's a neurostimulation system. Two parts.
Okay.
First, a subretinal photovoltaic implant. Think of it like a tiny solar panel placed under the retina.
Right, I've heard that analogy. Captures light.
It does, but it's more active than that. Geographic atrophy damages the photoreceptor cells, the light-sensing ones. This implant picks up the light signal and then directly stimulates the surviving retinal cells, the ganglion cells, deeper down.
Bypassing the damaged layer.
Exactly, but the signal needs processing. That's where the second part comes in. Augmented reality, or AR, glasses.
Worn externally. How do they help?
The glasses capture the scene, process it, enhance it digitally, maybe boosting contrast or edges, and then transmit that optimized signal wirelessly to the implant.
So the glasses do the heavy lifting of image processing.
Yeah, and the implant delivers this enhanced signal directly to the parts of the visual system that still work. The brain then has to learn to interpret this new sort of pixelated input.
The brain adapting to the tech. Amazing.
It really is.
Sticking with medicine, this next one could be massive, and it came from a really unexpected place. The COVID-19 mRNA vaccines.
Yeah, this highlights the incredible versatility of that messenger RNA platform. New research is suggesting quite strongly, actually, that the standard COVID vaccines can boost survival rate.
Boost survival. In what context?
In lung and skin cancer patients who are already receiving immunotherapy treatments.
Wow. Okay, how does a vaccine for an infectious disease help fight cancer? Is it just correlation, or is there a mechanism?
That's the crucial question, and they're working on it. But the leading theory is pretty compelling. The vaccine essentially gives the immune system a general wake-up call, It primes it.
Like a broad alert.
Exactly. A non-specific but powerful inflammatory response. And this alert state seems to make the immune system much more responsive when the actual cancer immunotherapy drug comes along.
So it supercharges the immunotherapy.
That's the idea. It helps the body better recognize and attack the tumor cells. It's acting like a powerful but non-specific immune adjuvant.
If this holds up in larger trials, phase 3 and beyond,
Mm-hmm.
we could be looking at using mRNA tech as like a universal pretreatment for cancer therapy.
Absolutely. It could shift the whole paradigm. Instead of only thinking about tumor-specific vaccines, we could use this platform approach to leverage the immune system's readiness. It could fundamentally change how we sequence treatments worldwide.
Mind-blowing potential. Okay, let's shift gears from these huge medical breakthroughs to something more. Well, kitchen level. Dietary science.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to rethink your smoothie recipe after this one. The banana problem.
Slight chuckle. Yeah, the data comes from the University of California, Davis, and it's pretty counterintuitive, especially if you love bananas in your health smoothies. Adding them can actually reduce the absorption of some key health benefits.
Reduce what specifically?
Flavonols. Those are the beneficial compounds you get from things like berries, kale, spinach.
And how much reduction are we talking?
Yeah.
Because bananas add sweetness, texture. They're kind of essential for many people.
It's significant, around an 84% drop in the measurable flavanol absorption when bananas are in the mix compared to when they're not.
84%. Wow. What's the culprit?
It's an enzyme called polyphenol oxidase, or PPO. Bananas have a lot of it. Apples, too, actually.
PPO. What does it do?
It's the enzyme that makes fruit turn brown when you cut it and expose it to air. Oxidation. In a smoothie, it basically does the same thing to the flavanols. It oxidizes them.
Making them useless to our bodies.
Pretty much. Biologically unavailable for absorption. So if your main goal is loading up on flavanols from berries and greens, you might want to skip the high PPO fruits like bananas. Or maybe add lemon juice quickly. That can inhibit PPO a bit.
Good practical tip.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, while we're busting dietary myths, let's tackle gluten. For years, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, NCGS, was blamed squarely on gluten itself. Millions went gluten-free.
Right. But new research is really challenging that direct link. The study suggests that for many people with NCGS symptoms, the bloating, fatigue, gut issues, gluten itself might not be the main trigger.
Seriously. So people might be restricting their diets unnecessarily. What else could it be?
Well, the prime suspects now are other components in the diet, particularly things called FODMAPs.
FODMAPs, what are those?
It stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. Basically, they're short-chain carbs that aren't absorbed well in the small intestine.
So they ferment in the colon, causing gas and discomfort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That fermentation process can cause symptoms very similar to what people describe as gluten sensitivity. Or it could be more about complex interactions between the brain and the gut.
So it's less about gluten and more about these other compounds or even the gut-brain connection.
That seems to be where the research is heading. It points towards needing better diagnostics, maybe targeting specific FODMPs rather than just cutting out all gluten. It could really help people liberalize their diets again.
That's huge news for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, sticking with wheat. Believe it or not, there's new science on spaghetti. The structure of it.
Chuckles. Yeah, it sounds mundane, but it actually ties back into that microscopic engineering theme. The structure of pasta is surprisingly complex.
Yeah.
And gluten, the thing we were just talking about people avoiding, it plays a critical role. It acts like a microscopic safety net at the molecular level.
A safety net. For what?
To stop the pasta falling apart when you boil it, gluten forms this really strong elastic network inside the dough. It traps the starch granules.
So it keeps the starch from just dissolving into the water and making the pasta mushy.
Precisely. Without that gluten network, the pasta would basically disintegrate. It maintains the structural integrity.
And salt. People always add salt to pasta water, just for flavor.
Mostly flavor, yes, but the science suggests it also plays a structural role. Salt actually helps strengthen that gluten network, makes it firmer, less likely to leach starch.
So for food scientists trying to make good gluten-free pasta.
This research is like gold. It tells them exactly what physical properties they need to replicate using other ingredients, like different starches or proteins, to mimic what gluten does naturally.
Fascinating. From the microengineering of pasta to the macroengineering of the cosmos. Let's head out to space. Real-life Tatooine.
Yeah, this is a big one for exoplanet hunters. Scientists have confirmed finding 3 Earth-sized exoplanets, orbiting a dual sun system.
Like in Star Wars, 2 suns in the sky.
Exactly like that. These planets would literally have dual sunsets. It's not just cool, though. It really stretches our understanding of how planets can form.
Because forming stable planets, especially small rocky ones, around binary stars, was thought to be, well, difficult, right? The gravity is complex.
Very complex. Models suggested it might be rare or unstable, but this discovery shows that planetary formation is probably more robust, more common, even in these tricky binary systems than we thought.
So potentially more places for Earth-like worlds to exist.
It certainly widens the possibilities. It proves complex orbital dynamics don't automatically rule out terrestrial planets. The universe might be even better at making planets than we realize.
Amazing. Okay, let's bring it back home, but way back in time. Earth's deep past. The boring billion. Sounds so boring.
Juckles, it does, doesn't it? That's the period from about 1.8 down to 0.8 billion years ago. But new geological research says it was anything but boring. It was actually the crucial setup phase for all complex life.
Why did it get the boring label then? What was thought to be happening or not happening?
The traditional view was geologic stability, not many major ice ages, no huge evolutionary leaps visible in the sparse fossil record. Kind of a planetary quiet time.
But that's wrong.
It seems so. The new science connects deep Earth processes, like plate tectonics, directly to biological evolution. Specifically, the breakup of an ancient supercontinent called Nuna.
Nuna. How did its breakup change things?
That breakup triggered a lot more tectonic activity, volcanism, mountain building, and all that geological churning released nutrients and, crucially, led to a significant long-term increase in oxygen levels in the atmosphere and oceans.
More oxygen.
Yeah.
And what else did the tectonics do?
It helped create vast, stable, shallow seas, warm, oxygen-rich environments, and those were the perfect places, the nurseries, for eukaryotic life to really take hold and diversify.
Eukaryotes, the cells with a nucleus, the basis for plants, animals, fungi.
Exactly. So this supposedly boring billion years, driven by slow, massive geological changes deep inside the Earth, was actually setting the stage, creating the right environment for complex life to eventually explode onto the scene.
So even the quiet times were essential. Okay, finally in this section, a neat contrast in space news. High-tech precision versus, well, mystery.
Right. On one side, you have the European Southern Observatory's new Foremost instrument. It just captured its first big cosmic view.
What's Foremost designed to do?
It's a spectroscopic survey instrument. It's going to collect detailed data on millions of stars and galaxies. This will give us critical insights into how galaxies form, the distribution of dark matter, how stars evolve. It's a huge data-gathering leap for astronomy.
Precision science and the contrast.
The contrast was this bright green fireball seen streaking over Moscow in Russia. Very visible, lots of reports, photos, videos.
A meteor.
Almost certainly. Astronomers think it was likely a meteor entering the atmosphere at a relatively low speed, allowing metallic elements like nickel or magnesium to burn off, which often creates that distinct green color.
But the public reaction.
Immediately jumped to UFOs, speculation about military tests, all sorts of things. It just shows that even as our scientific instruments get incredibly powerful, these sudden, visible celestial events still spark that sense of mystery and wonder and sometimes wild speculation. Space weather still keeps us guessing.
Okay, from the vastness of space, let's rocket into technology. And I mean rocket, literally. Almost. We're talking speed of light computing to start.
Yeah, this is potentially game-changing hardware. Tsinghua University in China unveiled something called the Optical Feature Extraction Engine 2, or OE2.
Optical engine, so using light.
Exactly. It processes data at an incredible 12.5 gigahertz, but instead of using electricity moving through copper or silicon, it uses beams of light, photonics.
Right. The big advantage there is moving past the limits of traditional chips, isn't it? What problems does light solve?
Three main ones: heat, power, and speed, or latency. Electronic circuits generate a ton of heat, which limits how fast and dense you can make them. They need lots of power for computation and cooling.
Light doesn't have that heat problem.
Not in the same way, and photons travel, well, at the speed of light. So OFE2 drastically cuts down latency, the delay in processing signals. For AI, especially training and running massive machine learning models.
Which need insane amounts of calculation.
Exactly. This kind of optical computing offers incredible speed and efficiency. It could make algorithms feasible that are just too slow or power-hungry to run well on current electronic hardware.
So optical computing might be the platform we need for the next generation of really advanced AI. Meanwhile, on the software side, especially for creative work, Adobe is moving very fast.
Very fast. They're building out their whole Firefly generative AI ecosystem. They just launched Firefly Image 5.
What's new there?
Big professional features. Things like layers, which designers absolutely need, and support for custom models so companies can train it on their own styles. Plus, new AI assistants built into their creative cloud apps like Express and Photoshop.
AI assistants?
Yeah.
Doing what exactly? Automating tasks?
Yeah, the tedious stuff, complex background removal, getting colors just right, making edits based on just typing what you want. The idea is to speed up the workflow for designers, photographers, freeing them up for the actual creative thinking.
But there's been huge anxiety in the creative world about AI and copyright, right? Using artists' work without permission for training. How's Adobe handling that?
That's become their key differentiator, especially for businesses. Adobe has committed to training Firefly only on content they have the rights to, mainly images from their own Adobe stock library or stuff that's clearly in the public domain.
So commercial safety is the promise.
Exactly. If you generate an image with Firefly, Adobe is basically saying you can use it commercially without worrying you'll get sued later because it was trained on copyrighted material. That's a huge selling point and is kind of setting a standard for responsible AI development in the creative space.
Okay, shifting focus geographically, the AI competition is fierce globally. A company in Shanghai, Minimax, just unveiled a new model called M2.
Right, and it looks very powerful. It's a big model, 200 billion parameters, which puts it up there with the largest ones out there. But the really interesting part is its architecture. It uses something called mixture of experts, or MOE.
Mixture of experts, how does that work? And you mentioned only 10 billion parameters are active.
So MOE is a clever way to get the power of a huge model without the massive computational cost every single time you use it, instead of firing up all 200 billion parameters for every single query.
Which would be slow and expensive.
Right. The system intelligently routes the query to only a small subset of experts' specialized groups of parameters that are best suited for that specific task. So maybe only 10 billion parameters are actually engaged.
Much more efficient. And you said it's good at agentic tasks. What does that mean?
Agentic tasks are complex, multi-step problems that require AI to do more than just answer a question. Think planning, using external tools or data, correcting its own mistakes, holding a longer conversation, complex coding, sophisticated data analysis, that kind of thing.
It's more like an assistant that can actually do things.
Exactly, and Minimax is positioning M2 as being particularly strong in this area, potentially putting it ahead of models like, say, Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro, for certain types of complex enterprise-level tasks. China is definitely pushing the envelope here.
The pace is just relentless. But this speed, this efficiency, it's starting to have very real consequences for people, for jobs. We're seeing that tension play out immediately.
Absolutely. Look at Amazon. They confirmed 14,000 corporate job cuts. And that might just be part of a larger reduction, potentially up to 30,000 overall.
And they're linking it directly to AI.
Explicitly.
Oh.
Leadership framed it as a strategic pivot. They're integrating AI aggressively and aiming for a leaner operational model. The efficiency gains from AI are translating directly into workforce reductions in some areas.
That's the stark reality. The efficiency dividend has a human cost. But then, almost in direct contrast, you have someone like Zoom's CEO, Eric Yuan, painting a very different picture.
Yeah, Yuan is predicting that AI will actually make work better. He believes AI will automate enough of the grunt work that it could enable a global 4-day workweek.
Without losing productivity.
That's his argument. He sees AI as amplifying human capabilities, allowing us to achieve the same or even more in fewer hours, shifting the focus towards employee well-being, more leisure time.
So displacement versus liberation. That's the core debate right now about AI and work, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Two very different visions of the future. While we wait to see how that shakes out, AI is definitely changing our personal lives too. Look at health tech.
Right, the Fitbit revamp using Google's AI.
Exactly. It's moving beyond just tracking your steps or heart rate. It's becoming more of a proactive coach. Using generative AI, it analyzes your personal health data over time.
Your sleep patterns, activity levels.
All of it. And then it creates these tailored health packs, personalized workout suggestions, nutrition tips, advice on improving sleep, all based specifically on your data and trends.
So it's not just reporting data, it's interpreting it and giving actionable advice.
Precisely. It's turning that passive stream of biometric data into concrete lifestyle recommendations, a big step towards truly proactive personalized health management.
Okay, let's look at how tech is intersecting more with public life, commerce, and even protest. Starting with payments, PayPal made a big move.
Huge move. They partnered with OpenAI. PayPal is now the first payment wallet integrated directly into ChatGPT.
Meaning you can buy things right from within the chatbot conversation.
Exactly. You're talking to ChatGPT, maybe asking about products or services, and boom, you can complete the purchase using PayPal right there. It turns ChatGPT from just an info tool into a potential e-commerce powerhouse.
And the market loved it.
Oh, yeah. PayPal's stock jumped, and they even raised their earnings forecast. It shows how quickly AI is moving from theory to actual commercial application, changing how we might shop online.
But that rapid deployment, especially with things like autonomous vehicles, often runs into public resistance, doesn't it?
Huh.
We saw that with the robotaxi vandalism.
Right. Waymo's co-CEO, Takaichi Malakana, had to address this escalating problem, people attacking their autonomous vehicles. The most shocking incident was one being set on fire during Lunar New Year celebrations in San Francisco, California.
Just destroyed. What's driving that? Fear, anger.
It seems to be a mix of things. Anxiety about job displacement, distrust of the technology, concerns about safety and accountability, maybe just general anti-corporate sentiment. Malakana stressed Waymo needs to be way more transparent.
More community engagement?
Yeah, explaining how the tech works, what the safety measures are, how they're deploying. She basically acknowledged there's this gap, this moral lag between how fast the tech is rolling out and how comfortable the public feels with it. That vandalism is a pretty visceral expression of that anxiety.
And finally, in the tech sphere, a battle over knowledge itself. Elon Musk is taking on Wikipedia.
He is. He launched Grokipedia. It's an AI-powered online encyclopedia running on his Grok AI model.
And the goal is to compete with Wikipedia. On what grounds?
Musk has been very critical of what he sees as a left bias in Wikipedia's content and editing processes. He's positioning Grokipedia as a more impartial, fact-based alternative.
So it's explicitly an ideological challenge.
Very much so. It brings the battle for control over information, over what counts as fact, directly into the competitive arena of the big tech companies and their AI models. That has pretty profound implications for how we all access and trust information online in the future.
All right, shifting gears now from the digital realm, the speed of light, to the often slower, messier world of geopolitics. Conflicts, trade, power struggles. Let's start in the United Kingdom. They seem to be facing pressure on multiple fronts.
They really are. First, there's the issue of housing asylum seekers. The cost of using hotels has spiraled into the billions of pounds, causing a huge public and political backlash.
So what's the government doing?
They're moving asylum seekers out of the hotels and into large government-owned sites, specifically former military barracks. It's a direct attempt to cut costs dramatically and address that public anger about spending.
But housing vulnerable people on military bases? That raises immediate questions, doesn't it? About suitability, conditions, the optics.
Absolutely. It's a clash between fiscal pressure and humanitarian concerns, a really difficult balancing act. And adding to the pressure, the UK is also dealing with a major national security headache.
What's
The
that?
collapse of an espionage case. 2 men were accused of spying for China, but the prosecution was suddenly dropped.
Dropped? Why? That sounds serious.
It is. And the reasons are murky. A parliamentary committee is digging into it, and they're hearing conflicting stories. Was it dropped because the security services felt the evidence wasn't strong enough for a conviction? Or was there political interference to avoid revealing sensitive information in open court?
Either way, it looks bad.
Exactly. It fuels concerns about the UK's vulnerability to foreign influence and espionage, and raises questions about the independence of the judicial process when national security is involved.
And these security worries are tragically echoed elsewhere in Europe. A really stark warning coming out of Belgium.
Yeah, this is chilling. An anonymous investigating judge in Antwerp, a major port city in Belgium, has warned the country is effectively becoming a narco state.
A narco state. In the heart of the EU. What's the evidence?
The sheer scale of the illegal drug economy, primarily cocaine flowing through the port of Antwerp, it's enormous. But the judge's bigger point is about systemic corruption.
How deep does it go?
According to this judge, it's infiltrating customs, police forces, and even parts of the judiciary. When corruption reaches that level, affecting the very institutions meant to uphold the law, it starts to look like a parallel power structure.
Wow. Compromising the state itself.
That's the implication. The fact that some judges reportedly need safe houses because of threats from drug gangs, that's a sign of a fundamental breakdown. It's a massive challenge for Belgium and for Europe, given Antwerp's role as a global trade hub.
Okay, let's cross the Atlantic. Argentina. Big changes there with President Javier Milei. The markets seem to love him.
Initially, yes. His
Yeah.
victory triggered a huge rally. Argentine bonds, stocks, the currency, they all surged. Investors were clearly optimistic about his plans for radical free market reforms.
Things like privatization, massive spending cuts.
Exactly. Severe austerity aimed at tackling hyperinflation and stabilizing the economy after years of crisis. It was a bet on shock therapy working.
And he seems to have some powerful international backing, or at least conditional support.
Well, former U.S. President Trump had publicly suggested that U.S. financial support could be linked to Milei's successfully implementing these kinds of reforms. It aligns U.S. strategic interests, at least from that perspective, with Milei's very specific radical economic vision for Argentina. It's seen as potentially stabilizing for the region's markets and a counter to other influences.
Interesting. Elsewhere in the region, friction heating up involving Venezuela.
Yes, between Venezuela, its neighbor Trinidad and Tobago, and the U.S. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro abruptly suspended an energy deal with Trinidad.
Why?
Because Trinidad agreed to host a U.S. warship, Maduro called it an act of aggression, basically drawing a line in the sand.
And this pushes Venezuela closer to
Russia. This move clearly reinforces Caracas's strategic ties with Moscow. And just to underscore that, a heavy Russian cargo plane recently landed in Venezuela. It's a signal of ongoing logistical and political support, especially when tensions with the U.S. are high. Classic great power competition playing out in the Caribbean over resources and influence.
And the U.S. is still actively involved in counter-narcotics in that region, sometimes with deadly force.
Yes. There were reports of U.S. military strikes off the coast of Colombia. They targeted boats suspected of smuggling drugs. 14 people were reportedly killed in these operations. It shows just how aggressive and high stakes that ongoing counter-narcotics campaign is, particularly in the Eastern Pacific corridor.
Okay, let's zoom out to the global trade picture. It feels like a constant realignment, a competition for resources and influence.
It absolutely is. You saw President Trump talking about a new golden age for the U.S.-Japan alliance. This followed a major deal focused on rare earth elements.
With Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, why are rare earths so important?
They're critical for everything: high-tech manufacturing, defense systems, green energy tech. And China currently dominates the supply chain. So this U.S.-Japan deal is all about securing alternative, reliable sources of these vital minerals, diversifying away from dependency on China.
That dependency is a huge strategic vulnerability.
Massive. So the U.S. is trying to build partnerships to counter it. But China, meanwhile, is strengthening its own regional ties. They just signed an upgraded free trade agreement with ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
An upgraded 3.0 version, they called it? What does that mean in practice?
It goes beyond just cutting tariffs. It focuses on deeper integration, things like digital commerce, developing shared infrastructure, making investment easier across borders. It basically strengthens China's economic bloc in Southeast Asia, creating a stronger regional counterbalance to U.S. influence and lingering trade tensions.
And finally, in the finance and geopolitics arena, the issue of funding Ukraine. Still a sticking point in the EU.
Very much so. The EU is exploring raising billions through joint debt issuance to keep funding Ukraine.
Why joint debt? What happened to the plan to use frozen Russian assets?
That plan, which involved potentially backing a huge loan like $140 billion with the profits generated by those frozen assets, is facing major hurdles, significant opposition, notably from Belgium. And the reason is practical and maybe a bit fearful.
How so?
Because Belgian financial institutions, particularly the settlement house Euroclear, hold the vast majority of those frozen Russian central bank assets. There's a deep worry in Belgium that if the EU seizes or uses those assets, Russia will retaliate directly.
Legally, financially.
Yes. Lawsuits, cyber attacks, pulling Russian money out of Belgian banks. They fear it could destabilize Belgium's crucial role as a financial hub for the EU. So this fear of retaliation is effectively blocking what seemed like the most obvious source of funding for Ukraine. And that paralysis could have serious consequences for Kyiv's ability to keep fighting.
A complex financial web with huge geopolitical stakes. Okay, let's turn to active conflict zones and some significant political moments, particularly in Africa and the Middle East.
The situation in Sudan is deteriorating rapidly. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. The Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, have reportedly captured El Fasher.
That's a key city in Western Sudan, right?
Yes, a major regional hub in Darfur. Its fall expands RSF control significantly, and the reports coming out are deeply alarming warnings of mass killings, potential ethnic cleansing. The humanitarian crisis there is escalating terribly.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, tensions spiked again over the the hostage situation?
Extremely high tensions. Israeli forces had received remains, supposedly of a deceased hostage, from Hamas as part of a truce deal, but then things went south very quickly.
What happened?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Hamas of a major breach of the truce. He ordered immediate, powerful strikes on Gaza.
What was the alleged breach?
According to Israeli military sources, the casket they received didn't contain the full remains of the hostage they expected. Instead, it apparently contained partial remains of someone the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, had already recovered back in 2023.
So Israel saw it as a deception.
Exactly. Netanyahu called it manipulation, a severe breach of trust. It completely derailed that particular truce effort and showed just how fragile and fraught any negotiation process is there right now.
And finally, in Africa, a landmark election result, or perhaps continuation.
Slight chuckle continuation is probably the word. Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon, he's 92 years old, the world's oldest serving head of state. He won re-election.
For another term, how long?
Another 7-year term. He officially got about 53.66% of the vote, but the victory was immediately contested. There were civil protests, widespread allegations of electoral fraud and malpractice.
A familiar story in some places.
It is. His supporters argue his long tenure provides stability, which is crucial for the country. But critics point to the lack of democratic turnover and the questions surrounding the fairness of the election itself. It highlights that ongoing tension between stability and democratic legitimacy.
Okay, let's pivot now to the dynamics of markets, finance, and the corporate world. We heard about geopolitical tensions, but market sentiment seems surprisingly optimistic.
In some places, yes. The Dow Jones Industrial Average in the U.S. hit a new record high recently. A lot of that optimism seemed tied to hopes for a potential U.S.-China trade deal finally easing some of those tariff pressures.
Any specific corporate news-boosting things?
Yeah, UPS shares saw a nice surge, and you had tech giants Microsoft and Apple both getting incredibly close to a $4 trillion market capitalization each. That reflects massive investor confidence, likely driven by expectations around AI boosting their future growth.
But that optimism isn't universal. The UK economy seems to be facing headwinds.
Definitely. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, which is the UK's independent fiscal watchdog, downgraded its forecast for the country's productivity growth.
Why is lower productivity a big deal?
Because productivity growth is fundamental to long-term economic health and rising living standards. Lower forecasts suggest ongoing economic stagnation, problems in the labor market, and it has immediate fiscal consequences. This downgrade alone could blow a $20 billion hole in the government's budget forecasts.
Making it much harder to fund public services or cut taxes.
Exactly. It really constrains their options and highlights some deep structural challenges in the UK economy.
Okay, let's talk about venture capital VC. It's always seen as this high-risk, high-return game. But one of the biggest players, Sequoia Capital, is sounding a note of caution.
A very strong note of caution. Roelof Botha, who heads Sequoia, made this provocative statement. He argued that venture capital is no longer a guaranteed asset class.
No longer guaranteed. Why?
His argument is basically about overfunding. Too much money chasing too few truly great opportunities. He pointed out that the number of VC funds in the U.S. has tripled roughly in the last couple of decades, from around 1,000 to nearly 3,000 now.
Where did all that extra money come from?
A lot of it from non-traditional VC investors, big pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, who saw the amazing returns VCs generated in the past and wanted a piece of the action.
But more money means?
It means valuations get inflated way beyond reasonable levels. It means returns get diluted across more funds and more investors. Botha actually called it return-free risk.
Return-free risk, meaning?
You're still taking on the massive risk inherent in early-stage investing, but the potential for those outsized traditional VC returns just isn't there anymore because the market is so crowded and valuations are so high. It fundamentally challenges the whole economic model of VC.
And that kind of high-pressure, high-stakes environment, sometimes it leads to companies cutting ethical corners, right? We're seeing that in the fintech space.
Yeah, there's a pretty messy corporate espionage lawsuit going on right now. It involves two valuable startups in the 401k management business, Human Interest and Guideline.
401k, that's the U.S. retirement savings system. What's the accusation?
Guideline is accusing Human Interest of basically stealing sensitive company secrets. Things like operational plans, strategic documents, how they acquire customers, really core competitive information.
Wow. What does a lawsuit like this tell us about that sector?
It suggests it's incredibly competitive, hyper-aggressive, Probably a zero-sum game where any edge is crucial. This case could end up setting some important legal precedents about what counts as trade secrets versus just competitive intelligence in the fast-moving tech world, especially in finance.
Okay, moving away from high-flying startups to more traditional businesses facing trouble. A regional airline in the UK, Eastern Airways.
Yeah, they've filed something called a Notice of Intention to Appoint an Administrator. That's basically a formal signal that the company is in serious financial distress and could be headed for insolvency or collapse.
Why are they struggling?
It seems to be a combination of factors hitting many smaller airlines: rising fuel and operational costs, plus intense competition in the regional market, especially as travel patterns shifted after the pandemic. Hundreds of jobs are at risk. It highlights just how fragile that regional transport sector can be.
And even huge established players aren't immune to problems. McDonald's and Coca-Cola facing issues.
Right. McDonald's is apparently grappling with significant customer dissatisfaction. People complaining about slower service times and inconsistent food quality. It's forcing them into a major review of their operations worldwide.
Even McDonald's has to worry about the basics. And Coke.
Coca-Cola is reportedly dropping a popular soda flavor. This comes after they lost a significant court case related to their #2 selling soda brand. It's forcing a strategic rethink of their product lineup in a very competitive beverage market. Even the giants stumble sometimes.
All right, let's wrap up our deep dives today with some important headlines from the health, social, and justice spheres. These often hit closest to home, but reflect broader societal issues.
We start with some really sobering news about maternal health in the U.S. A major study looked into stillbirths.
What did it find?
It found that thousands of stillbirths happen every year without any clear warning signs beforehand. No known clinical risk factors were present in many of these tragic cases.
That's deeply concerning. It challenges the idea that we can always predict or prevent these outcomes based on current knowledge, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests our standard risk factor models are missing something crucial. There's likely a gap in our understanding of placental health or subtle fetal distress signals. This finding really screams for more research funding to find new, maybe less obvious biomarkers to identify pregnancies at risk.
A critical need. And tragically, we also have a specific case under investigation, the death of Jacques Hunter following childbirth.
Yes, her family is alleging a terrible medical error occurred. They claim she wasn't properly informed about receiving an overdose of labor-inducing drugs.
An overdose. That raises huge questions.
Absolutely. Questions about informed consent. Did she know the risks and the dosage? About patient safety protocols. How could an overdose happen? And about communication. Why wasn't it flagged or discussed immediately? It's a heartbreaking case that underscores the immense responsibility and the need for absolute rigor in obstetric care.
Switching gears slightly, back to technology's impact. Data emerging from ChatGPT paints a worrying picture about user mental health.
Yeah, this is quite startling. OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, shared data indicating that potentially hundreds of thousands of users each week express thoughts or symptoms related to psychosis or even suicide in their private conversations with the AI.
Hundreds of thousands a week. That's staggering. What are the implications?
It raises profound ethical questions for these AI platforms. Are they just passive tools, or do they have a responsibility when users express such severe distress?
Should the AI intervene? Offer help?
That's the debate. This data really highlights how people are using these tools, sometimes as a confidant in moments of crisis. It puts pressure on developers to build in better safety measures, maybe automatically providing links to crisis hotlines or mental health resources when certain keywords or patterns are detected. Ignoring it feels like ignoring a massive, unmanaged mental health triage happening in the background.
A huge responsibility. Okay, moving to the social and legal front. A very high-profile trial underway in France.
Yes, involving the French First Lady, Brigitte Macron. 10 people are on trial in Paris for cyber harassment.
What's the harassment about?
They're accused of spreading this completely baseless, malicious conspiracy theory, the so-called transvestigation theory, which falsely claims that Madame Macron was born male.
Just vile stuff. How's it affected her?
Her daughter, Tiffaine Ozier, gave powerful testimony. She said the relentless online abuse caused a significant deterioration in her mother's health. This trial is really important for tackling large-scale, politically motivated online disinformation campaigns and holding perpetrators accountable.
A test case for combating that kind of viral defamation.
Definitely. And speaking of defamation, there was another interesting case involving academia, history, and Hollywood.
Oh, what happened?
An academic named Richard Taylor successfully sued the actor Steve Coogan and the production companies behind a film.
Which film?
It was related to the discovery of King Richard III's remains. Taylor was involved in that project. He argued the film portrayed him inaccurately and unfairly, basically defaming him.
And he won. Against a major film production.
He did. He received a payout. It sets a potentially significant precedent about artistic license versus accountability.
So where's the line? How much can filmmakers change reality?
The court seemed to say that while filmmakers need creative freedom, especially with historical figures, they still have a duty of care when portraying living people. You can't just make things up if it damages someone's reputation, even in a dramatized account. Accuracy and fairness still matter.
Interesting balance. Okay, let's finish with a few unusual global snippets, starting with a missile toy at a skating competition.
Chuckles. Yeah, this is bizarre. At the Cup of China figure skating event, the Chinese ice dancing pair Ren Junfei and Xing Jianing were seen in the kiss and cry area, where skaters wait for their scores holding a large soft toy replica.
The replica of what?
A Chinese nuclear missile, specifically the DF-61, which has a very long range, 12,000 to 15,000 kilometers.
That's quite a choice for a mascot at an international sporting event. How did that go down?
The International Skating Union, the ISU, was not amused. They officially deemed it inappropriate. It obviously sparked debate about using sports events for nationalist or military displays, even if it was just a toy. Very unusual symbolism.
Definitely raises eyebrows. Okay, quick hits. A big football club shakeup.
Yes, at Celtic FC in Scotland, manager Brendan Rodgers resigned abruptly. The reports cited an irretrievable breakdown in his relationship with the club's board and its main shareholder.
So they needed someone fast.
Immediately. They brought back a legendary former manager, Martin O'Neill, as a temporary replacement to steady the ship while the team was struggling in the league. High drama in football management.
And finally, a serious administrative error in the UK justice system.
Yeah, the Justice Secretary had to address an incident where the wrong migrant offender was released from custody. A major blunder.
Unacceptable, as the Secretary called it. What happens now?
Immediate reviews of all the protocols. Checking data management, record accuracy, security procedures. It highlights ongoing concerns about the pressures and potential for error within the correctional and justice systems when dealing with complex cases and in large volumes of people. #tag outro. So when you pull all that together, the sheer range this week is just incredible. We went from the molecular structure of gluten holding spaghetti together.
Right, that microscopic safety net.
All the way back to the breakup of a supercontinent, Nuna, over 1 billion years ago, shaping the conditions for life itself. It's mind-boggling scale.
And we saw those choices in technology having immediate global impact. Amazon cutting jobs as it pivots to AI, while Chinese firms like Minimax push ahead with new, efficient AI models. We saw geopolitics playing out over essential resources like rare earths, and how just the hope of a trade deal can send the Dow Jones soaring.
It really underscores how interconnected everything is. The science breakthroughs redefining cancer treatment or vision restoration are happening alongside these intense struggles over power, money, and even the nature of information itself.
So, having processed all this, you, the listener, now have this really multifaceted picture of where things stand. Science is making leaps, but the structures of society, of global power, of corporate ethics, they're all under immense pressure.
So here's the final thought to leave you with. We're seeing these incredible advances like optical computing, promising AI processing literally at the speed of light, information moving faster than ever imagined.
Yeah, the potential is huge.
But at the same time, look at the struggles we're having managing the consequences of the tech we already have. The robotaxi vandalism born of public anxiety, the human cost of AI-driven layoffs at Amazon, the ethical tightrope of AI interacting with users in mental distress, the failure to even prosecute alleged espionage effectively.
Our ability to handle the fallout isn't keeping pace.
Exactly. So the question is, what happens when our technological capabilities, the sheer speed of innovation, races so far ahead of our ethical frameworks, our societal adaptation, our political decision-making? What are the dangers when that gap becomes too wide?
You're enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.